Hey, this is Natasha Nurse. I'm the host of the Sisters on Fire IRL series, and I'm really excited to be speaking with Cheryl Wood, who's an international motivational speaker, best-selling author, and professional speaker development coach for women. Her company, Personal Power Enterprises LLC, is committed to empowering women globally to courageously share their voice, their story, and truth to impact the world with their unique fingerprint. Wood has provided the tools and strategies for countless new, emerging, and aspiring women speakers to master and monetize their message. Her compelling story of transitioning from a childhood of poverty to a position as a legal secretary in corporate America, where she was frantically challenged with creating work life balance as a mother of three, to claiming success on her own terms by building her own speaking empire, generating over 1 million and inspires over $1 million, inspiring other women to take big risks and raise the bar on their expectations in order to create the reality they desire. Wood has been featured on ABC, Radio One, Forbes Magazine, Huffington Post, Essence, Black Enterprise, Ebony, Good Morning Washington, The Washington Informer, Afro American Newspaper, and numerous other media outlets. She has delivered keynote presentations for a host of prestigious organizations, including the FBI, the United States Department of Defense, the United States Department of Agriculture, the United Nations, federally employed women, Virginia Women in Public Finance, Blacks in Government, and Verizon. And without further ado, how are you, Cheryl?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yes, that is quite quite a bio. So I guess I'd love to know just right out of the gate, based on kind of sharing a little bit about your story. What was that moment like when you decided that enough was enough and that you were going to build your own business and your own empire?
Yeah, it was actually a culmination. In the year 2009, a couple things happened in that year. Number one, I just got tired of being tired and
Mhm.
tired of saying that I wanted a different reality because at the time I was dropping my kids off. I have three little ones. And I was dropping them off at about 6 o'clock every morning so I could go off to a job that I didn't love, to be honest, that didn't nurture my spirit. It wasn't positioning me to really create a legacy or to create generational wealth. So it was the frustration of that and not getting back to my children until 6 at night. So they were in someone else's care for 12 hours a day, and that just, it used to literally eat away at me inside. And that was compounded by the death of my father in that same year. Later in that year, my dad passed away of a massive heart attack in his sleep on Thanksgiving Day of 2009. And that was just kind of that tipping point of, look, life is not promised to you tomorrow, and life is short. And it sounds cliche-ish, and you hear people say it, but when you experience it from someone that's that close to you, your parent, like it is a wake-up call that you've got to do the things that you want to do to leave your unique fingerprint on the world now, because you don't know that you're going to wake up and be able to have an opportunity to do it tomorrow. So it was that culmination of things, and finally with the passing of my father, I was like, I'm not playing no more games. Or as you'll hear me say, playtime is over. I've got to get out into the world and really leave my fingerprint.
Okay. And what were the resources that you used to get started and to keep moving forward?
Well, number one, I was best friends with Barnes and Noble because at the time I really was unfamiliar with this whole world of coaching. So I'd never had a coach. I didn't know what a coach was. I didn't come from a world of personal development and professional development. My background, I grew up in poverty in a housing project in the inner city of Baltimore, Maryland. And so that wasn't an environment where they taught you to go out and develop yourself personally and professionally. It was, hey, you survive. So thriving wasn't anywhere in my dialogue. It was just about surviving. So I was still in that mindset of surviving. And so I initially, when I started off, didn't invest in coaches, didn't invest in where I really wanted to go, but I read a lot. So I would go and I would find myself, every week I was going to the bookstore and I was getting as many books as I could get on entrepreneurship and how do you grow a successful business and what do you need to know and how do you get started. And then I just got started. So, again, in 2009, I started a T-shirt business and I connected it to what I love the most, which is being a mother. So it was called Moms Are the Best. And I would go out on weekends because I kept my full-time job. I didn't leave my job. I I kept my full-time job, and I would go out on weekends, and I would sell this inspirational line of T-shirts to women and mothers. And I
Mhm.
learned so much through that process. But that ended up detouring me to where I really was meant to be, which was the speaker industry. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know that was going to come. I just got started with what I knew and gave myself permission to be okay starting with small beginnings.
Mhm.
And 18 months later, from doing that, I got a phone call from Morgan State University. Someone there informed me that they were hosting their annual women's conference, and they felt that I would be a good fit to come in and teach a session to other moms in the Baltimore community about how to start their own businesses. Now, granted, I was still wet behind the ear. I still was learning myself, but I believe that sometimes God will present opportunities to you, and you owe it to yourself to say yes, to
Mhm.
explore the opportunity, even when you feel unqualified. So I was
Mhm.
certainly, by all means, if you kind of went down the checklist, unqualified because I'd never spoken before. But I obviously feel like I was called to do that thing. So I went,
Mhm.
I did the speaking engagement, and oh my God, I know the date, okay? It was September 18th, 2010. That's when I went.
Mhm.
And I knew in that moment the way I felt and the way that I knew that I was moving the women in the room to believe that they could create their own business that would allow them to use their unique gifts. The way that I saw their eyes open up with hope and belief and possibility, and the way I felt internally, I knew
Mhm.
on that day that I was born to speak. And as they say, the rest is history.
I love it. Okay. And what would you say has been the greatest lesson that you've learned now from when you started to now?
The greatest lesson I've learned is valuing myself, not
Mm.
diminishing who I am and the value that I bring into the marketplace just
Mm.
because maybe I don't have the same number of years of experience as someone else, or just because I don't have this piece of paper that so many people rely on to say that you're good enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, and that's a college degree. So again, I came from an environment of surviving. And so when I graduated high school out of Baltimore, Maryland, I didn't go to college. I didn't go for 4 years of higher learning. I went straight from high school into the workforce because I wanted to pull my mom out of poverty. So that meant, look, I got to go somewhere, get a job, and get a check. That's the only
Mhm.
way I saw as my way out of that environment. And
Mhm.
so that started to play in my mind as I came into this world of speaking. And I'm looking at these people who are so smart and they have all of this, it look like, from external perspective, it looks like they just have it going on. And I'm like, who am I? Who am I
Mhm.
to think that I'm just, this African American woman who grew up in the hood with no college degree, no real connections, if you will, to people who are elite or celebrities or anything like that. Why would I ever think I could actually do this? Why would I think anybody would ever listen to me? And that was the mindset that I had for a really long time, just doubting my own ability to rise above all of my past experiences and that environment that I grew up in. And so if I could do it again, I would not throw away valuable time diminishing my gifts. I would acknowledge that I am enough just as I am, and that there will be people who will be magnetized to work with me based on what I bring to the table, with or without a piece of paper that says I'm good enough.
Absolutely. I love that you said that because yeah, I'm a lawyer. I've done a lot of different stuff in my life, but yeah, at the end of the day, your skill sets are your skill sets, and it's not tied to where you went to school. It's not tied on how much money you had growing up. It's based on who you are as a person, and so much of that is your mindset. So I definitely know that everyone listening will truly need to take a moment and think about that. So now I guess I would say then, what would you say has been the greatest challenge you've experienced in your career?
The greatest challenge, it has to kind of connect to charging what I am worth, because, and again, I still think it all connects to the mindset, right? Like you don't charge what you're worth if you don't even have the belief system that you're worth it. And
Mhm.
so people are going to accept free as long as you give it for free. And I
Mm.
gave it for free for way too long because I doubted and questioned, will anybody really pay me? Like, but it's just
Mhm.
me. Like I stayed in that, but it's just me phase for too long. And that resulted in me giving what I call the homie hookup. That's
Mhm.
when people don't want to pay you the full price. They always are looking for some drastic discount, or they want to pay you a fraction of what you said the cost was, and you accept it because you have not developed the belief and the confidence that you deserve the price point that you set it at. So
Mm,
my biggest challenge was, Cheryl, if you're going to have a thriving, successful business, if you're going to grow a six-figure or a seven-figure business, you have got to get to a space where you believe enough in the value that you bring and the solutions that you offer that you're willing to set the price point and stick to it. And understand that it's okay that everybody won't be able to afford it. Because
mhm,
guess what? It took me 7 years to be able to afford the coach that I really wanted. Lisa Nichols is one of my business coaches. It took me 7 years to finally afford that $40,000 investment. So it's
mm,
okay that not everybody can afford it right now. If they really value you as a solution, they will do what they need to do and find a way to be able to hire you and pay you based on the value that you deliver.
I love that. Okay. And how has your journey been affected being a woman and being a person of color?
Mm. I have walked into so many spaces and I look around, I'm like, wow, where are the rest of us?
Mm,
Seriously. It's in the
mm,
speaker industry, there are a lot of, especially let me start with being a woman of color. There are a lot of platforms I go to and I am the only woman of color on the roster, on the speaker roster.
mm,
And for me, it really is, it's motivation. It's motivation for me to help break down those barriers and break down those walls to get more women of color in those spaces, to get more women of color who are getting paid, in that 1% bracket of what speakers, there are not a lot of speakers who generate six and seven figures. Many speakers, and I know because I work with and train new and emerging speakers, but many of them stay well beneath the six or seven figure mark. So my goal is to interrupt that norm, that vicious, repetitious cycle of not seeing many women or women of color on the bigger platforms where they're paying you $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 to come in and do a keynote presentation. I want to see more of us there. So
mm,
it's been challenging. And I've certainly gone through, those spaces, those seasons, if you will, where I questioned if I was good enough to be in those spaces and why me. And I just continue to allow God to use me and to listen to his voice and say, I placed you here for a reason. And I believe a part of that reason is to break down those barriers and show them that women and women of color are just as equally qualified and called and have the expertise and the creativity to come in and knock it out of the park when we do a presentation. So every
mm.
time I go, I owe it to myself and I owe it to my other sisters and my other women of color to be the most amazing speaker on that stage so that I can then open up doors of opportunity for other women of color.
Absolutely. Okay. And we obviously are speaking because given how unapologetic and amazing you are clearly a sister on fire. But how would you define the term sister on fire?
That's such a great question. I define a sister on fire as a woman who has crazy glue commitment to her dreams. Because if
Mm,
you remember that crazy glue that used to be back, I mean, I'm probably dating myself, but I mean, something could literally break. It could be a glass, a ceramic glass or mug, and it could break, and the handle could break, and it could break into pieces. But you could use that crazy glue, and it would just mend it right back together as though it was always there, as though it had never broken. And I think
mhm,
that's what a lot of us as women go through. We go through seasons of brokenness. We go through seasons of trauma and challenges as we're grinding to become the greatest version of ourselves, but we have to be able to glue it back together and keep pressing forward. So when I think of a sister on fire, it's someone who's tenacious, she's bold, she's courageous, she faces her fears head on, she refuses to take no for an answer, she keeps coming back until she gets what she wants. And that
mhm,
is how I consider myself. I'm like, you might not know me right now, but you gon' know me because I'm going to make sure that I keep showing up and I keep showing up in excellence and I keep showing up in greatness and I make sure that I'm making my mark on the world by being bold, by being outspoken. There's a quote I live by that says, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you demand in life. And so a
mhm.
sister on fire is a woman who demands, not always through her words, but through her actions and her consistency. She demands that the world pay attention to her unique gift and what she has to offer to the world.
Absolutely. And who in your life were women that lived up to that definition?
My mother, oh my God. My
Mm,
mother is one of the most amazing women, one of the strongest women I know, from a personal perspective. I mean, I watched her raise three children on her own with little resources. Um, my father, unfortunately, he suffered from alcoholism, and that just wreaked havoc on our lives. And my mother kept it all together. She was my example of crazy glue. She kept things together and protected us as much as possible from the trauma that look, there was no way around it because of what my father experienced. We experienced it, so it touched our lives. But to see her keep things together and keep us, myself, my sister, and my brother, on the straight and narrow, to keep us focused, to keep us out of trouble, to demand that we give the best of ourselves was such an example for me. On the professional front, I'd have to say my coach, Lisa Nichols. She's
Mhm.
powerful. She has literally, it's almost like she's the phoenix who has risen from the ashes and picked herself up from her own environment of poverty. I love when she tells her story about being on government assistance and knowing in that space that she made a decision that she was never going to be in that space again, that there was a time when she didn't even have enough money in the bank to be able to buy Pampers for her son, so she had to wrap her son in towels for 2 days, and that
Mhm.
she looked him in his eyes and said, "We will never be in this space, in this position again." So
Mhm.
seeing that type of tenacity and that, again, crazy glue commitment that my past doesn't define me and that I get to dictate what my future looks like, I mean, that's been a huge model for me from my mother and from my business coach, Lisa Nichols.
I love it. Okay. And I know obviously if people want to work with you and all your amazing wisdom and insight, they've got to pay. But just for a quick teaser, I guess what would be three things that you would say for anyone listening who's like, oh my gosh, I want to be a speaker. I want to do what she does. What are like three components of booking that gig and actually being a speaker and being paid for your work and your mastery of the words, and then also just like mindset, right? The mindset of being the speaker that you want to be and getting out there and having that business that you want.
Yeah, I think number one is to understand that most speakers do not generate all of their income just from speaking on stage. If you're going to be a speaker, you need to also consider yourself as a business person, and a business person typically has multiple streams of revenue. So a lot of times, people who are new and emerging speakers are looking at speakers who are traveling all over the world, and they're assuming that they're generating their 6 or 7 figures just from speaking on stage. And I can tell you, 90% of us are not. It is
Mm-hmm.
a combination of speaking as well as we do things like VIP days with clients. We have virtual training programs. We have digital products. We do boot camp events, live events, conferences, webinars, seminars, and on each of those things, we have an offering that we can extend to our audience, which again keeps the revenue streaming in. So number
Mm-hmm.
one, just understand and acknowledge that your 6 or 7 figures is going to come from multiple streams of revenue that you tap into as a speaker, not just, oh, I'm on stage in front of a big crowd speaking. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think number two is to understand that your signature story is going to be the most powerful part of your presentation, because it doesn't matter what you're teaching. I can probably find it on Google. That's the truth, right? Because Google gives you access to everything. So whatever it is that you're saying you're the expert in, marketing, branding, sales, speaking, I don't care what it is, I can probably Google it and find the content, some of the content that you're going to present. What I'm not going to find is your story. So it's your job to pull your story into every presentation so that the audience is not just educated and informed, but they're also inspired. And they're
Mm-hmm.
inspired because they can now see themselves in you. So when you share your signature story, a part of that is going to be the mess and the struggle that you went through before you overcame and how you're now standing where you are. And so
Mm-hmm.
your audience always remember that they're currently in that space of struggle that you were in but have overcome. So they're looking to you for the answer and the solution. How do I get through my struggle and get to the other side and overcome? So when you share your story from the stage, now they see you as more than just, oh, a speaker who has all the answers. They see you as a human being who now has developed a heart-to-heart connection with them, and they are able to see themselves in you and say, if she can do it or he can do it, so can I. And then I
Mm.
think the last piece, so many things I could say. What do I want to say? I want to make it juicy. I think the last piece, number three, would be to really distinguish the difference between heart work and wealth work. Heart, HEART, like your heart work
Mhm.
versus wealth work. So a lot of new and emerging speakers stay what I call in a zone of being a brokepreneur because they have confused heart work with wealth work. So you might have an audience that you absolutely love to serve, like everything in your core wants to serve this audience. But the first question that you have to ask is, does this audience that I've identified as my target audience, do they have the revenue capacity to meet my revenue projections? And
Mm.
if they cannot, then you are going to stay stuck in a space where you are passionate about what you do, but you ain't making no money. And if you're not making any money, eventually you are going to bow out of that business. So
Mm.
you need to identify, okay, maybe you love serving this audience, but maybe they cannot meet your revenue projections, so you just set them aside as hard work, which means you still get to serve them, but you get to serve them on your terms. When you
Mm.
want, how often you want, you get to decide how, if you're going to come and donate books to an organization because you love serving that audience, you get to decide how many. So for me, when I started out speaking to moms, a lot of stay-at-home moms. Well, they didn't have no money. They were trying to keep their money in the household. So I was broke because they were broke. So
Mm.
it didn't make sense for me to say that that was my target audience because they were never going to meet my revenue projections. So
Mm.
instead I said, well, I still love serving that audience, and I'm going to serve them. But I'm going to donate my services 6 times a year to organizations that serve moms, stay-at-home moms who sacrifice being in the workplace to be at home and raise their children. And I'm going to waive my $10,000 fee, and I am not going to sell books. I'm going to give books, right? So I now set the parameters. But then when I come over here to my wealth work is working with new, emerging, and aspiring women speakers who know that they are ready for that moment of sharing their story and of mastering the craft of speaking so that they can add speaking as an additional revenue stream. And these are women who have that passive income to invest in my offerings, whether it's my Rock Your Stage Speaker Intensive or a boot camp or a live conference. They have the passive income to invest. So that's my wealth work. And when I'm in my wealth work, people know you better have my check.
Ah. Oh, that was juicy. That was very juicy. Very nice. So everybody, don't get confused. You come in under the wealth or you're coming in under the heart, but it's not going to be confused. I love it. Okay.
Yes.
So I guess with that, then, are there upcoming events or programs that you'd want to announce? And then also, how can people get in touch with you so that if they can work with you and they got the money, then what to do with it?
And look, I want people to understand that you're worth it. You have to understand and get to a space where you know that you're worth investing in you internally just as you do externally. So I find a lot of women, they will invest on them instead of in them. So you
Mhm.
got the red bottom shoes and the gorgeous weave and the beautiful dress that you paid $500 for, but you're a hot mess on the inside.
Mm.
Or you're not willing to invest in mastering the craft of speaking because there's a difference between talking and speaking. And when you're speaking into people's lives. So that's a whole other topic, but I just want you to understand that you are enough and you are worth an investment in you just as you would make an investment on you. Okay, so let's
Mm.
just say that.
Mhm.
I have a Rock Your Stage Speaker Intensive program that I host a couple times a year. So people can reach out to me directly at assistant@CherylWoodEmpowers.com. If you want information on that, just put in the subject line Rock Your Stage, and I'll send you all the details about that. Again, the email is assistant@CherylWoodEmpowers with an S on the end.com. And then I host a series of live events throughout the year. I host an annual women's business conference called Playtime is Over. This is our 5th year. We have not announced the official date yet, but it will be in November. So if you just follow me on social media at Cheryl Empowers, and that's CherylEmpowers, Cheryl Empowers. If you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, then you can just stay abreast of the announcements that we make about the live events as well as some of the initiatives that we work on for new and emerging speakers. We do have a great program called the Speaker Development Lab, and that's a great starting point for someone who needs to come in on kind of a lower tier bracket of speaking. Maybe they're not ready at the level that they're ready to invest at a premium price point. It's a very, very economical price point. You can go to speakerdevelopmentlab.com to find out more about that.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Cheryl, I appreciate your time. I feel like I should cut you a check for the gems you've dropped today, but I'm going to hopefully come under your heart work and
I love it.
and hopefully everyone listening is equally as tickled and inspired as I am. And you are a sister on fire. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to learn a little bit more about your story, to speak with you, and for you to share your story with the Sisters on Fire IRL series. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day.